Victory in war does not depend on the number of soldiers but on the forces that come from heaven. 35 years ago, in his first speech about the state of the nation, President Carlos Saúl Menéndez said that the courage of a people is not only proven on the battlefield to face misfortunes, but also by the amount of truths it is capable of enduring. He was speaking to the Argentine people in a context with some economic similarities to the current one, which required making difficult decisions similar to those I have to make today. During the election campaign, we spoke to the Argentine people with the truth for the first time in decades, and the people understood, accepted, and chose us, even though there were other candidates who promised the same solutions, repeating the same conciliatory and deceptive speech as always. For the first time in a long time, society chose the candidate who preferred to tell an uncomfortable truth rather than a comfortable lie. We proposed to society that the only way to avoid an even worse economic catastrophe would be with a brutal adjustment of public spending. We also proposed to society that the correction of repressed prices is citizens first, the good Argentines are second-class citizens. Therefore, by the mandate for change given to us by the people and with the endorsement of having told the truth and nothing but the truth during the campaign, during our first 82 days in office, we have carried out the most ambitious government program in memory in the economic sphere. We began by destroying the fiscal snake egg. We have made the deepest public spending cut in our history, with a 5% reduction. We reduced the national government's primary spending by 40% in real terms. A result that emerged from eliminating public works, reducing 98% of transfers to provinces, halving the ministries, firing ghost public employees, eliminating social plans for people who did not need them, ending poverty intermediaries, and minimizing the fleet of advisor cars and cell phones. In short, while there has been dilution, there has been much more of a chainsaw. Ultimately, it is an adjustment that has been made mostly on the national public sector and not as always done by increasing taxes and loading all the weight on the private sector. As you have heard me say in the last 123 years, Argentina had a fiscal deficit, and the fight against high tax pressure is for us the mother of all battles. They are the cause of poverty and stagnation of the last 100 years. After decades of taxpayer government, Argentina once again has a government that will take care of every peso earned with the sweat of Argentines. We have advanced with the sanitation of the central bank's balance sheet. In fact, since we came to government, we have bought about $9 billion in the market, where despite this issue, the paid execution, the contraction has managed to keep the monetary base constant. This means that for the same monetary base in pesos today, we have 9,000 million additional reserves covering more than 90% of it. Not only that. The monetary base. The price of the parallel dollar, the gap with the dollar of import corrected by country tax has disappeared, and the dollar futures have aligned with the guidelines established by the BCRA in a context in which the price of bonds rises, the country risk of sabotaging the future of good Argentines. Therefore, in this context, it will be ever closer. Fourth, we have been able to solve the problem of the debt of the importers of 42,000 million that hung over the head of all Argentines. As a result of all these economic measures, we have reached both primary and financial surplus in our first month of government, which constitutes a global record in the history of modern capitalism. And as if that were not enough, we have taken all these measures solely with the mechanisms of the executive power, without support of any kind from the rest of the political spectrum. In security, we have inaugurated a new doctrine of the law dared to implement despite it being the only correct path. Firstly, we began to enforce the law without exceptions. Which is why we freed the streets from the scourge of constant beacons through our public order protocol in each and every one of the demonstrations that were called in these almost 3 months of government, and which began immediately as soon as we took office, breaking a record in democratic history. In all of them, we maintained order and avoided indiscriminate cuts by the security forces. Additionally, we are summoning police organizations in the fight against organized crime. That is why, through the flag operation, we deployed new federal forces in Rosario, and thanks to prevention work, we managed to reduce willful homicide in public streets in the areas controlled by the federal forces by almost 60% in these 2 months. That is why we also created a special management system for high-risk prisoners in our penitentiary system, a practice that unfortunately became common recently. Regarding social assistance for those who have the least, that is why we carried out an audit process of social plans that showed, as we suspected, that at least 52,000 work plans were improperly assigned to beneficiaries who did not meet the conditions planeros while traveling abroad, many with dubious connections in politics, many public employees, and whose elimination from the register resulted in an annual saving of 43,000. That is why we also implemented Line 134 of the Ministry of Security, which helped us uncover the perverse mechanism that piquetero organizations use to bring people against their will to demonstrations under threat of removing their plan. We received about 80,000 judicial complaints and managed to discover, thanks to this complaint system, the darkest face of this phenomenon, a political band in Chaco that sexually exploited women for their social plans. We are ending the extortion of social organizations towards beneficiaries, and thanks to the security protocol implemented by Minister Patricia Bullrich, we are also ending the daily extortion that social organizations impose on society every time they block a street. We always said in our government, those who block do not get paid, but we have the will to protect as much as possible the victims of the impoverishing system we are trying to change. No Argentine is to blame for the incompetence and greed of politicians having destroyed their incomes, especially the most vulnerable. Therefore, we decided to end the intermediary system and strengthen direct assistance mechanisms. In this line, we have doubled the amounts of the Universal Child Allowance, Pregnancy Allowance, and the food card so that families affected in this new school year can buy school supplies and materials. That is why we included in the decree of necessity and urgency, education as an essential service. It will be required to provide at least 70% of the educational service during any strike. We always said that we asked for the vote not for us to have power, but to return it to the Argentines. This crusade begins by reducing the size of the state to its minimum indispensable, reducing public positions, millions of pesos that historically were used as currency to buy political support. That is why the National Civil Aviation Administration will establish a new regulatory criterion so that no politician or their relatives can use private planes except for strictly official matters. From the 1st of March, no official traveling with a ticket paid by a public body can accumulate miles for personal trips. We also ended the festival of official vehicles that hindered the economy, complicated people's lives to protect some privilege or aggravated the problems they were supposed to solve. Among these things, I want to highlight that we freed the choice of health insurance so that workers are no longer prisoners of the union of their activity and can choose whichever service provider they prefer. We repealed the nefarious rental law. As a result, the offer in the market doubled from December to February. Consequently, the real value of rents decreased. We also repealed the nefarious supply law, which was a tool politicians used to extort companies, and we prohibited the power of politics to ban exports. We modernized labor legislation to facilitate the hiring of registered employment, something that was fought by unions. However, All these early achievements represent only the surface of the great changes we have come to implement in Argentina. To deepen our mission to end the privileges of politics and its friends, we are sending Congress a package of laws. We will eliminate privileged pensions for presidents and vice presidents. We will require unions to elect their authorities through periodic, free elections supervised by the electoral injustice, which will limit the terms of those authorities to 4 years and establish a cap of only one possible re-election. Specific collective agreements made in the free association of workers of a company or group of companies will prevail over sectoral collective agreements. We will end that madness of imposing labor conditions on people. They will not be able to run as candidates in national elections. Moreover, any public official with a firm conviction in the second instance for corruption crimes will automatically lose any benefit they had for being an official.